are basically sandwiching a film that was made by a documentary filmmaker on our building who got intensively involved with the way our building worked and the impacts that it has had on a city and on a energy corporation that is public. We worked with TransSolar Engineering out of Stuttgart, and we learned how to really think about a building that would be responsive to climate. You start with climate, and it's an unusual climate that we started with. Winnipeg is quite central to North America, but it is a climate of extremes. And the city map on the right, the thing that I would point out is how the grid of the city shifts, and the yellow line on the left side is due south, and it becomes fundamental in the way this building is organized. Winnipeg gets more solar radiation than any other big city in Canada. It has 700,000 people. It also has a prevailing wind that comes from the south, which as a Canadian is counterintuitive. We think it comes from the north and the west, but the windrows showed that it came from the south. And it's unbelievable. It's unbelievably cold, and it stays cold for long periods of time. We had simple, clear goals. The most important one up there was that they wanted to achieve a 60% reduction of energy consumption from our Model National Energy Code, which had never been done before for a large building. The building has been described as an open book. There is a due west loft and a due sort of east loft, and the building forms almost a capital letter A with a wider series of stacked atria that are facing due south to harness that solar radiation and also to take advantage of the prevailing wind from the south. And you can see there is a prototypical stack of 6 stories, and there are 3 south-facing 6-story atriums that are the lungs of the building. We're generating 100% fresh air, 24/7, no recycled air. It's a concrete building with a double wall, and it has a high-performance double glazed wall. The public gestures are under the west wing is a public galleria that goes through to a transit mall that 95% of the bus routes come to, and that changed the mobility getting to work, and we created a public park. So we'll see if the technology works.
We are here in Winnipeg, and we are looking at not just a sustainable building, but the most sustainable building in Canada, and one of the top 10 most sustainable buildings in the world. This is the Manitoba Hydro building. I don't know what Winnipeggers think, but when I first saw this building in 2009, I was deeply impressed, and I'm deeply impressed because this building isn't just a building. It isn't just a place where people work. It's a statement, and it's a statement about the city, about the planet, about how we inhabit it, about where we're going to be going in the future, about all those things. It's an enormously important building, and I'll tell you something. There aren't many buildings that are important. This is an important building.
I think this building became greater than Manitoba Hydro.
It brought this sustainable design in big commercial buildings to another level.
This is world-leading excellence. This is a virtuoso building. It is at the very height of excellence and global leadership.
The Manitoba Hydro building is important because it shows people that sustainable architecture, the new architecture, manages to do so much more than just what a building traditionally does. You know, this is an intervention into a city, it's an intervention into an institution, it's a whole new way of doing things, and it works.
It's all about a paradigm shift in thinking of how we move forward with our typical construction. In North America, we've gone on this linear progression of this is how we do things, and we're afraid to change. We make money doing it this way, our business is doing very well. I don't want to make that change. But in actual fact, that change can really be beneficial.
So we really have to rethink the way we design, rethink the way we build.
So everything that we do today is the future. It becomes the future instantaneously. And that's why hydro is important, because it's not some future that's way out there. Like some people think the future is like maybe 5 years out. It's not. It's right now. It's just the next second. You know, the buildings that we make now actually forecast the future. They are the future.
When we were doing hydro, to me the interesting question was, if you're trying to reduce energy consumption by 60%, that means that you really have to examine the heating, cooling, and lighting. And you had to come up with different concepts which really were passive.
Yeah, the idea of passive systems or a passive operation is to use like the natural resources which are available on the site.
Low-grade solar thermal. Everybody who lives in a cold climate has experienced low-grade solar thermal in the sunshine. And where have they done that? Get into your car in the middle of winter when it's minus 35 degrees, tremendously cold outside, but very, very sunny. You'll get in your car and it'll actually feel warm. Just taking the natural sun power, bringing it into a space, into a wall system, a window, letting it go into a space and heating that space. Why don't we use that quality?
And when you look at the form and structure of the building, it's not just the architect coming up with an idea. The architect, the engineer, how do we open that building up to the south so we can capture that sun, utilize it, store it in the ground so we can use it in the winter, the energy?
It is a natural expression of the integrated thinking between the engineered systems and the architecture. And the form of the building gives expression to the entire thought process. That's what I think is really incredible.
This is one of several lungs in this building, and basically this is kind of a mechanical space. But the brilliance of what's happened here is that mechanical space has been designed so that it can be usable, not just usable, but usable in a very pleasant, attractive way. So you've got couches and chairs, the receptions are held in here, birthday parties, going away parties, all those kinds of things. But the function of the room is quite otherwise. The fresh air comes in from the outside. Intake valves distribute the air through the building. That wonderful 6-story waterfall that you see over here is actually a way of humidifying the air that is circulated through the building in the summer and in the winter. But when there's too much moisture, the cold water actually manages to draw it out of the atmosphere within the building. So I think that this is such an important message in the 21st century, how all these things have to do double duty. These hybrid spaces like this one here that serves a very prosaic mechanical function, but which is designed to be a space that can be used and enjoyed. If you can do that, if you can make everything do double or even triple duty, then we have a chance of making cities that are truly sustainable.
Of course, we save money in operation. If it's energy efficient, we have less operational costs for energy. But I think what's more important is the well-being of people.
Top of the list was supportive workplace, a healthy, contemporary, effective office environment for staff.
Really, we were after comfort. That's the bottom line. Like you'd say that all goals are important, but if the people inside aren't comfortable, then we've got a problem.
We're not designing for architectural magazines, we're designing for people.
We weren't coming here to build a building that had better energy ratings. That was a side benefit, but the real benefit was building a workplace where people wanted to be, where it was healthy and where people wanted to live.
And one of the first things we hear from literally anybody that comes into the office tower is you could immediately feel the fresh air.
For me, working in the space, the air quality, I have to say, has been the most dramatic feature of the building.
Because a lot of time has been spent on, being able to make a building that would have, 100% fresh air, non-recirculated. I think that people are talking about that in the workplace. I think it's fantastic. And the skin of the building is really critical to not only how the building performs, but how it looks. So from the outside, it's a glass building, but the glass is fundamental to daylighting, the operable windows. I think people gasp when they see the windows starting to open on the building, but they're fundamental to a natural ventilation system, without which you can't take advantage of any of the natural phenomena outside the building.
And you think there is no intermediate season in Winnipeg, which we know, but the building last year operated 40% of the time in natural ventilation mode. Mechanical systems were turned off completely 40% of the time, which is enormous in a climate like this.
And I think the whole lesson of this building is that it can be done. I mean, for Winnipeg, with its freezing cold winters and its boiling hot summers, you'd think would be a very difficult environment to do this kind of building. But it's been done. This is it. This is the proof right here. We're sitting in it.
But I think the best buildings in the world today not only speak of their own ideas, but they're also very well grounded in the environment that they're built in and the culture, because architecture, if nothing else, is a cultural phenomenon.
Buildings like this one that understand that they're part of an environment, the natural environment, also understand that they're part of a civic and urban environment. Most structures, the thought process goes no further than the facade. Where the building ends is where the thought ends. In this case, it's where the thought begins. And that's why this building is so important. Even if it weren't sustainable, which it is, it would be important because it's trying to bring life back to this city, Winnipeg.
And one of the things about the building is this public square that we're on here is actually it's privately owned by Hydro.
Oh, okay.
And when they were designing the building, they decided to not put the building all the way to the end of the sidewalk like most buildings are, but to actually give it quite a public space, which you can see today is being used. Why would a corporation, why would anyone, an architect designing a building, want to create a public space, do you think, especially in Winnipeg's downtown?
I don't think there's very much green space that the employees can enjoy. So I think even for employees from the Hydro building or from the surrounding areas can actually enjoy this on their lunch break. I'm enjoying it today just being in the shade.
And what's happening right now today?
They have a market, a farmer's market, which is great. Today's the first day. And so we got an email through our organization. We thought we'd come check it out.
So every Thursday, I think we'll probably come down here and look at what the vendors have to offer. And I think it's a good thing to do something different over lunch.
Right.
One of the key reasons the KPMB was selected for the project was because of their strong sense of urbanism and how they saw that structure fitting into the fabric of Winnipeg to enhance the urbanism of Winnipeg, to enhance an opportunity for the Winnipeggers. The Galleria space, for example, works beautifully as it's going to be able to function on a number of fronts, from being able to hold social functions like weddings, etc., to all kinds of other civic functions within the building that are just going to be fantastic given the space that the architects have created.
I would say that we were driven to make those public spaces because we have confidence in the idea that making a healthy public realm in a city is a very, very good thing to do.
So I think this is, let's say, probably the bigger achievement than the energy efficiency, the contribution to downtown Winnipeg.
And this is common with most clients, I assume?
Common? I think I've never ever had a client like this. Never ever. Also not in Europe. And I think this is what we keep telling clients as the great experience of Manitoba Hydro. First of all, a building design process is a process where you rethink how you operate.
One of the real values of Manitoba Hydro is that it's an exemplar. It stands as an exemplar that other people can copy the process It's not about copying the building, it's copying the thinking, or really being inspired by the thinking, and the invitation to be innovative and not be afraid and not be stuck in some old paradigm. I think that's what Hydro did.
Thank you very much to Deco Dawson, our documentary filmmaker. We thought it was so important to be able to hear from a number of voices that were involved in this project, because it really was an integrated team that was able to achieve these results. My name is Mark Pauls. I'm an engineer at Manitoba Hydro, representing the clients here today. And I'm very excited to be able to come back to the CTBUH after 10 years and to talk about not just the promise of this building, but the actual performance. And I want to start kind of working through some of those charter goals, and it kind of was mentioned in the video, but the first and foremost goal was the highest quality of space for our staff, and that's such a challenging one to measure, right? We can look at anecdotal evidence where people say they're more alert at the end of the day because of the high air quality and the low CO2 levels. I would certainly invite you all to come for a tour, and you can experience it for yourself. We've had lots of different design teams and clients come through looking at other projects. But we have a couple of metrics that we can present, and I'm happy to do that today. One of the really surprising ones for us was we did an analysis through our HR department to look at sick time. And we were surprised to see that, out of our 2 million square feet all across the province of Manitoba, various office buildings, we have about 6,500 staff scattered throughout the province in a range of different types of buildings. The 2,000 staff that we have at our Manitoba Hydro Place building have a day and a quarter to a day and a half less days of sick time per person per year. And that's a real measurable improvement in productivity and a savings for our clients. And we think that's strongly related to this idea of high quality airflow, of daylighting, access to views, and so on. We also have a system for measuring, like a lot of facility management groups, we have a service call system where you can call in to complain if you're too hot or too cold. And the quality of the space is also seen through a significant reduction in our people complaining. I mean, it's funny to think about it, but people are wasting a lot of time in buildings simply complaining to their colleagues about how hot they are on a certain day or how cool. And the double facade and the energy concept goes a long way into ensuring that we have a high quality of space that's really fleshing out in productivity improvements for our staff. Another key goal of this project was energy, and there was this goal to be 65% more energy efficient than the Model National Energy Code for Canada, and that's an aggressive goal. And I think a lot of projects talk about this as a design number, and you see it published in case studies at the design level or just after construction. But we made a very concerted effort to continue to engage with our design team. It's probably even incorrect to call them a design team because they really were a design, construction, operation team, and we actually worked with our engineers, our architects, TransSolar, our energy engineer, to work through and track our energy performance on a month-to-month basis in the first few years of operation, and we didn't give up until we achieved our energy target and actually surpassed our energy target, so we're 70% more energy efficient than the Model National Energy Code for buildings in Canada. And that translates to real savings for us as a client. That's $1.5 million, just shy of $1.5 million of annual savings on a go-forward basis. And that's even with Manitoba, which is, we're lucky to have hydroelectric energy and very, very cheap energy rates. And that's $1.5 million savings in an area where you have very low energy costs. So, I mean, that's very attractive to us as a client. I want to also kind of follow up on performance related to sustainability. So as probably mentioned or you may have noticed earlier, Manitoba Hydro Place was certified LEED Platinum, the first LEED Platinum office tower in Canada. But I think there's a more important story to tell even beyond that, and that is the impact of this location and being near transit corridors, being in an area of Winnipeg that's very accessible by bike lanes, public transit. We went from an old head office prior to this building where we had 95% of our staff taking a vehicle by themselves, parking in a huge parking lot, and the greenhouse gas emissions associated with that commuting behavior was significant. And we've gone from this shift to 84%, either taking a bus, taking their bike, carpooling, and so on. And that's a significant environmental, it even dwarfs the greenhouse gas savings that you'd find from the energy improvements. But as a Winnipegger, and I think maybe my colleague from Singin can relate to this as well, as a Winnipegger, sort of a relatively minor city in North America, of course,
I'm a lifelong Winnipegger. If you're a Winnipegger, chances are you are a lifelong Winnipegger. People don't come, people don't leave, it seems like. But we have the impact on urbanism I've seen firsthand over the last 10 years. The decision to design this park, which has kind of become a focal point for gatherings downtown. The decision to avoid a cafeteria within the building, which drove our staff out to the street to go and enjoy local restaurants. That's a significant impact on the urbanism for downtown Winnipeg. The farmers market, which was mentioned earlier, now we have a place for staff to go downtown. And in a lot of cities where you're coming from, this is maybe not so surprising, but for us, where we were a victim of suburban sprawl and people have gone out to the suburbs, it's rare for Winnipeggers to, it was a recent development in the last 10 years spurred on by the Manitoba Hydro Place project to be gathering downtown. So that's our project. I want to thank you all for your time. Thank you very much to the CTBUH for the nomination, and thank you to our design team for delivering this project. Thank you.